Hello again from the beautiful Ozarks of Arkansas. This is Travis Ayres, a.k.a. Marc Sommers. Marc Sommers was my radio DJ name when I did Top 40 radio at stations in Hartford, New Orleans, and New York City for 35 years. Had a wonderful time, and I'm here on YouTube telling some radio stories about the people and the events that happened along the way of those radio days. In the back there, that's Big Red. That's Big Red there. That's my favorite truck. That's not my only truck, but my favorite truck. No, I'm not getting a commercial sponsorship from Silverado or Chevrolet. I'm just trying to. No, I'm just sitting here next to my driveway today on a lovely afternoon. I brought my props again because this is part 2 of Marc Sommers Remembers the New York Radio Legends. So I brought some pictures here that, well, in the first edition of this video, we did a little tribute to the morning mayor of New York City, Harry Harrison. That is Harry right there. And up here in the corner is, in the front, Ron Lundy. Hello, love. And that is Big Dan Ingram in the back. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about those two guys in this video today. I went to New York City from New Orleans in 1979, joined the station in 1979. I was there at the station a couple of weeks before I actually met the 3 New York radio legends that were working at WABC. And I got a little note in my mailbox after a couple of weeks. Now, let me tell you, in New Orleans, when we had a DJ staff meeting, it was usually in the back room somewhere in a conference room, and somebody would order some pizza, and that's where we would talk over what we were going to do with the radio station in the coming weeks. Staff meetings would generally happen 3 or 4 times a year. So I'm at WABC in 1979. I get a memo in my mailbox that we're going to have a DJ staff meeting, an air staff meeting. And I think, well, that'll probably be in the conference room at ABC. But as I read further down the memo, it turns out it says it's going to be in the towers of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, most famous hotel in New York. I think probably one of the most famous hotels in the world. Well, I thought that was pretty cool for a country boy from Louisiana to be able to be going to the Waldorf Astoria for us to meet all the rest of the staff of WABC. And the day that it arrived, I was living just across the river in New Jersey, and I took the 11A bus on the red and tan line, came into the Port Authority, and decided, instead of taking a taxi cab across town to 5th Avenue where the Waldorf Astoria was, I decided to just walk across town. I figured it would take me about 15 or 20 minutes, but I just wanted to, I was new there in New York, I just wanted to soak in the city and the atmosphere of the city and the importance of the moment for me. So that's what I did. I walked all the way over to 5th Avenue, found the Waldorf. That was kind of amazing, because I didn't know my way around New York that well at that time. But anyway, found the Waldorf, took the elevator up to the towers, and when it opened up, the elevators opened up, just a beautiful, large, beautiful suite. And standing on the other side of the room, first people I saw, standing next to a window and looking out at that beautiful New York skyline, were 3 guys, Dan Ingram, Ron Lundy, and Harry Harrison, all chatting with each other. And it was so cool to see these guys, 3 of the most famous people in radio, and you could just tell the way they were chatting that they were friends. And Harry was the first one that saw me, came in, walked over to me and introduced himself, and then Dan and Ron also, and couldn't have been friendlier or more welcoming to me that day. I do remember Rick Sklar was there, because officially at that time WABC did not have a program director, and Rick Sklar was the head of programming for all of the ABC owned and operated station, and Rick was the guy who hired me. I may have been the last disc jockey hired by Rick Sklar, but Rick was there, and I don't even remember what the staff meeting was about. I just remember that was the first time I met the New York Radio Legends. So first of all, let's talk about Ron Lundy. Ron and I were both from the South. We had both worked in Mississippi and earlier at a small station. Yeah, this is kind of strange. Ron and I worked different times at WDDT in Greenville, Mississippi. Ron was working there, I believe, in the early 60s, and I came to WDDT in 1971. But when I got to the radio station, that's what WDDT in Greenville, Mississippi was famous for, the fact that Ron Lundy had worked there and then made it all the way to ABC. He had gone from Greenville to WLCS in Baton Rouge, great little radio station in Baton Rouge that a lot of people got to bigger markets going through WLCS. And strangely enough, after I had been at WDDT for about a year, I also got a call from WLCS in Baton Rouge, and they offered me a job. And I thought, wow, maybe I am on the same path that Ron Lundy was on. But it didn't turn out to be that way. They did offer me a job, but they offered me less money than I was making in Greenville, Mississippi. So I turned them down. I hated to do it. Tried to talk them into more money, but didn't convince them. So I turned it down, but pretty soon after that, I got a call from WTIX in New Orleans, and I made the jump from Greenville to WTIX. But I guess that little radio station, WDDT, it's kind of a claim to radio history that both, there's my neighbor. We all wave here in Arkansas. But that was kind of WDDT's claim in radio history that two guys that worked there made it all the way to WABC in New York. So I got to know Ron at WABC very well, and even better at WCBS-FM when we both worked there. And one of the things that Ron told me, gave me some very good advice, because Rick Sklar had mentioned to me, the only thing he mentioned to me when he hired me was, Mark, make sure that when you say the station call letters, you say WABC, WABC, because being from the South, I tended to say WABC, so I corrected myself and made sure I enunciated the call letters, WABC, and I told that story to Ron, and Ron said, let me tell you, Mark, don't ever lose all your Southern accent up here in New York, because I have personal experience. It works very well. And Ron did sound Southern on the air, and it did work well for him. And I took that advice and kept a little tinge of that Southern accent. Since I've been down in Arkansas, I've been getting a lot of it back over the past few years. So that was good advice from my buddy Ron Lundy, from the greatest city in the world. Okay, Dan Ingram. Dan Ingram, I got to know Dan very well. Now and then, Dan and I would have a beer together at the bar around the corner from WABC occasionally. That was really great. And but I got to know Dan especially when Dan moved to mornings in I think late 1979, early 1980. Dan made the move to mornings when Harry Harrison left the radio station. And now I always thought Dan was the quintessential afternoon drive guy, but he did a good job in the mornings, for about a year. And the station on Monday evening or overnight would sign off for transmitter maintenance. That means the station would go dark for 2 or 3 hours on the overnights on early Monday morning. And so they decided that it wasn't good for Dan Ingram to come on the air at 6 a.m. after 2 or 3 hours of dead air. So they instituted the 4 to 6 a.m. Monday morning Marc Sommers show. I called it the Dan Ingram warm-up show, because it's basically what I was doing, trying to get some audience there for Dan when he came on. And it was during that year or so that I would get off the air at 6 a.m. and Dan would come on the air, and I would hang around for the next hour or so, and we would chat between records. And I try not to distract him or anything, like you can distract Dan Ingram anyway. But I really got to know Dan during that time, and I watched him work too, and how he worked the mic, and how his whole presence, watching from that side of the mic, watching Dan Ingram do his magic. And it was during that year, even though I had been in radio about 10 years at that time, it was during that year that I really got the essence of how to do one-to-one radio, where you're talking to that one person driving in their car, driving into work, or two people at the most. You might have hundreds of thousands of people listening to you at any given time in New York City, but you're talking to one or two people at a time, and Dan knew how to do that. And so that was a great experience. Eventually, all of us would end up at WCBS-FM, just one block away down 6th Avenue, and we had some beautiful years. All of us had some beautiful years rejoining Harry Harrison at WABC. I'm not sure exactly what year Dan joined the radio station at CBS-FM. I'm trying to remember. I think about 1992. But I'm on the air one night. I'm on the air doing the 6 to 10 show on CBS-FM, and the hotline rings, and I pick it up, and I instantly recognize the voice as Dan Ingram. He hasn't been on the air yet. I knew that the station had signed him, but he hadn't been on the air yet. And I picked up the phone, and the first thing Dan said to me was, "Mark, you sound great." And I did radio for 35 years, and that was the highlight of my entire career, of whatever else I did. Dan Ingram calling me and telling me I sounded great. That was the highlight of my career. I'll never forget it. When Dan passed away, I believe it was June of 2020, if I remember, that Dan passed away, and I did a tribute to him on Facebook, and I said in that tribute, Dan Ingram was not only the best disc jockey that I ever worked with, Dan Ingram was the best disc jockey anybody ever worked with. I'll still stand by that. This is Marc Sommers. Don't forget, if you like our videos here, our radio stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We appreciate that. And you can also check out my website. It's travislayers.com, travislayers.com. We've got air checks there from, old radio air checks from WCBS-FM. There's one from WDRC in Hartford, too. As far as Dan Ingram, Lundy, and Harry Harrison, those air checks, just go to the internet, look them up. They're all over the place. There's dozens and dozens of them. So that is the tribute. Marc Sommers remembers the radio legends of New York City. Hope you enjoyed it. One more look at Big Red there. Oh, what a beauty. This is Marc Sommers, actually Travis Ayres. Have a great day.